welcome to The Resource, the podcast propelling employer brands to recruit smarter and retain better. I'm your host, Priscilla Peters.
I'm your other host, Scott Dismuke. Priscilla, I got to admit, I am very, very excited about today's episode.
Listen, I almost couldn't sleep last night. I'm not going to lie. Like I would wake up going, okay, what should I say this? Should I say that? I mean, like, I'm very excited about the interview that we're getting ready to do.
Yeah, my biggest thing right now is just don't be stupid. That's like my goal for this episode is just don't be stupid.
See, my goal is don't be a bully fan.
Okay. All right. So let's expand on that one a little bit because we've never actually attended a game together.
We have
right?
not.
So
no.
Are you one of those? Are you one of those fans?
Yes. Okay. I try not to heckle the other team. Those people who know me well are laughing right now. Yes, I do. I will tell you this, where we sit, we have direct visibility at football games. And remember, we're Razorback fans, so we don't, we win about half the time. But anyway, where we sit, we have direct visibility to the opposing coach's box, and it's glass. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, it is fun, okay? Because especially if we're winning, like, that was a horrible call, depending on how many cocktails I've had, one of those things. But I mean, here's the thing, like, what I love about this is our last episode, we have Bob on. He gave us like great insight into the freight market and all that. And now we have someone completely different that's going to give a new perspective on recruiting and retention. I mean, this is going to be fun. This is going to be really fun.
Yeah. Listen, this is, we're very honored for our guest today. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think though, before we bring him on, I think we kind of have to talk a little bit about our fandom here, because both of us are quite rabid sports fans, right? Yeah. And I think some of that comes from, different areas and different times in our life. So I know you're a Razorback fan. So obviously my son just finished his freshman year at the University of Arkansas. I did not grow up a Razorback fan. My wife and her family were all Razorback fans. But I did not grow up. I grew up in Missouri, so I was a lowly Missouri Tiger fan. And still am. But obviously now I'm signing checks to the University of Arkansas. So I have a financial rooting interest in being an Arkansas fan. It was a tough year for my first year to be a Razorback fan. We had high expectations in football that didn't come to fruition. We had really high. I mean, we just had 3 players from our basketball team, 3 players that were drafted in the first round of the NBA draft. And we really didn't do that good.
I know.
We just had a tough season basketball-wise to have 3 players.
I mean, listen, we did pretty well. I mean, Sweet 16 ain't bad this week, okay?
It's not. I know. It's not bad. But when you have 3 players drafted in the first round, we should have at least made it to the Final Four, right?
I know, but listen. I don't want to go there again. My goal is don't be a bully. I have some opinions on one of those players that got drafted, but I don't. I'm sure he's going to listen to this podcast, so I don't want him coming for me. No. But listen, I'm not going to lie. It's we have this song when we win a game, which, we don't sing it often, but sometimes we do. It's hard to be humble when you're an Arkansas Razorback fan. It's actually not, just so you know. Like, that's a lie. It is tough. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Hey, did you see that they recently announced who's coming to Bud Walton Arena in November of this year?
Duke.
Got the Duke Blue Devils coming to town.
Listen, I'm ready because you know what else? It's the 30th anniversary of when we kicked Duke's tail and won the national championship. Thank you very much. So,
well, I've already told my son that he better be at that game.
Yeah.
If I'm paying for him to go to school, he'd better at least go to that game.
Yeah, listen, that place will be rocking. There is nothing like Bud Walton when a big opponent comes to town. I mean, I can hardly contain myself. It's so much fun. It's so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, listen, speaking of Bud Walton.
Speaking of Bud Walton, that's right. So I guess now that we've kind of talked about Arkansas enough, I think we probably better bring in our guests for this episode. So why don't we get to our guest? Well, Priscilla, I got to say, I am super excited today for our guest. We have somebody joining us that certainly can talk to us about recruiting and retention, somebody that is a prolific recruiter himself in recruiting and retaining players in college basketball. He has guided his current team to over 150 wins in 8 seasons, the program's first ever number 1 ranking in both national polls, and a memorable run to the NCAA Final Four in 2019. His accomplishments also include 3 SEC regular season championships and 1 SEC tournament championship and 4 NCAA tournament berths with his Auburn Tigers. So please welcome to the show, Coach Bruce Pearl. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be with you guys. And War Eagle from Disney World, as we speak right now, Scott. I am at the Wide World of Sports ESPN campus. The NBA Top 100 is going on right now, and they take the top 100 high school players in the country, or at least most of them, and get them here in one venue for us wizards in college basketball to evaluate and then recruit, and then in these challenging times, try and retain.
There you go. Well, I have to be honest with you. So you're actually on with a couple of Razorback fans. So Priscilla lives in Arkansas, grew up in Arkansas, and has been a Razorback fan her entire life. My son just finished his freshman year at the University of Arkansas, and so I'm signing a bunch of checks to the university. So therefore, I have a financial rooting interest in the Hogs. So we really appreciate you joining us, Priscilla. What can we do for Coach today?
Yes, thank you so much, Coach, for joining us. We've been so excited about this for a while as we've been kind of connecting with you and talking about it. So, like Scott said, we are Razorback fans, but I got to tell you, there's a special place in my heart for Auburn. So we travel around to different campuses. Obviously, we go to games. We're kind of diehard around here. That's all we have in Little Rock or the Razorbacks. And I will tell you, the Auburn fans are very classy. Like, even if you kick our butt, like, they're not rubbing it in our face. Whereas some schools are. I'm looking at you, LSU. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling you, it's so nice to play a team that when they win, they're classy. When they lose, they're classy. So I will say, like, I do like the navy and orange. I do. I'm not gonna lie. But you guys are always super kind. The fan base, I know they love you, and they're always super kind. So. But like Scott said, we are so excited to have you on. We kick off the show every time with our guests with what we call the first 5 serious questions that seriously do not matter. And so we are going to dive into that. So here we go.
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1, Coach. In your opinion, what is the best sandwich?
Well, I'm a professional eater, so I love all kinds of sandwiches. But since I grew up in Boston, and there was nothing like a sandwich at a kosher delicatessen, my favorite sandwich would have been at the Carnegie Deli, and the combination, I think it was called the Broadway Danny Rose. It was a combination corned beef and pastrami with some pretty hot mustard on rye. But that doesn't mean I don't love, like, clubs and tuna fish and chicken salad, and you put it on a sandwich and I'll eat it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Coach. So what is your favorite movie?
I guess Forrest Gump was probably one of my all-time favorites. But if you ask my kids, they tell you that I've watched The Hunt for Red October way too many times.
I love that one. The Hunt for Red October, that's a good one. You're pulling out from the vault. I love that one. I love it.
So you like Forrest Gump, even though Forrest played for Alabama?
Yeah, he did. But here's the deal. Forrest Gump could never have been admitted to Auburn. Our standards have been way too high, and so it's really good that there are universities like Arkansas and like Alabama that can take students. Because, I mean, we have a system in this country in higher education where everybody should have an opportunity to be able to get educated.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Very, very well done.
I love it. Okay, Coach, what is the most used app on your phone?
Well, I'm 63 years old, so I'm not even sure what an app is, right? I don't know. I should be using my Bible app way more than I do. I'm probably on ESPN, the ESPN app, probably more than any. And I do spend, I don't know if you'd even call Twitter an app, but for a long time, I was never going to get on Twitter because I thought tweeting, was something that should be inappropriate. Like you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't be able to tweet. It's kind of like a little, I don't know you well enough to tell you what I really think it means, but and then every now and then I will obviously, when I don't know the answer to something, we'll Google it. So those are probably where I hang out.
Nice.
Oh, and obviously, Waze as I'm trying to navigate the world, right?
There you go. Waze is popular. We've had somebody else tell us the same thing. So, all right. So, Coach, I'm actually real excited to ask you this one because obviously when you were at Tennessee, we saw you come into Thompson Bowling with all painted orange and everything. So I'm actually interested in this one. What is a talent that you have that only those close to you know about?
Great question. Landscaping.
Oh.
Yeah. Irrigation, sod, flowers. I'm infatuated with flowers. So planting and fertilizing and weeding. Only thing is ants don't agree with me. So, but I love just getting my hands in the dirt. And, I love landscape. I love the texture of landscaping, the green grass, the pine straw or the mulch, the different colors of the flowers and even the green. I love the different shades of green and mixed in there with some maroon and then just flowers. That's my passion. I'll spend my wife will wonder where I'm at and she'll know if she can't find me, I'm outside digging the dirt somewhere.
Well, that explains your amazing tan that you keep year round. So now we know why.
Yep.
All right. So last of the first five is, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you hope to be doing?
Well, if Washington, D.C. wasn't such a cesspool and if it wasn't so corrupt and and everybody just trying to stay in power, and if it was a place where you could really do some good for the country and have a healthy exchange of ideas and different opinions and different thoughts and try to come together and do things for the betterment of our country, I'd love to find a way to serve my country in some way, whether it be politically or militarily or in some form of service. I love my country.
Wow, that's great. That's great, Coach. Appreciate that. That's wonderful. Well, we finished the first five. We'll kind of get down to the meat of everything, and I think probably a lot of people don't know this. Maybe some do, that you actually worked for a trucking company at one point. Is that correct?
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, Scott. Absolutely. I was the vice president of marketing for the H.T. Hackney Company, and we were a wholesale distributor in about half of the country. And basically, in addition to a lot of other things, we put stuff in convenience stores. And we did it really, really well. Bill Sanson is the owner of the company. It's a privately held company, competing against McLean and Cormark and E.B. Brown. Those are some of our competitors. And I'll tell you that even though I was on the marketing side and very involved in sales, I could cost us money if I sold it the wrong way in an effort to try to get the business. And there just is not a lot of margin in that industry at all. I could cost the company a lot of money by getting a lot of business. But where we actually made our money was when we learned how to get it to you cost effectively. That's where we made our margins, where through our warehousing and through our distribution channels, we were able to get it to you on time, on target, and do it, productively. And I think people on the outside would never understand that. They would think, oh, you just charge more for it, you make more money. And that wasn't it at all.
Yeah. Well, so much like the trucking industry right now, obviously you're in a very highly competitive environment when it comes to recruiting. You're in Orlando doing that now. So from your perspective, what are some of the most important things to you when it comes to recruiting prospective players?
Well, I mean, obviously things have changed a lot over the years, as they will. The fundamentals, of recruiting are about relationships and trust. If I have an opportunity to get a player, what kind of job did I do with that business? What kind of job did I do with that player? If I did a great job with that player and that family, and they graduated, he realized his goals of playing professionally, and he came to me as a young man, and he left me as an Auburn man, if you will, then I did my job. And then doing my job, I would then have the opportunity to be able to go out there and continue to recruit. People are going to want to play for me because they want to play for the culture. They want discipline. They want to be held accountable. They want to win championships. They want somebody to see something in them that they don't see in themselves. They want to see the roadmap to success and what their future could hold. Again, honesty in recruiting is so very important. Like, don't overpromise, over-deliver. And when you lie to them, and you tell them things that aren't realistic to get them to come or to get the business, and then you let them down, you've lost them because they will think that was intentional. But if you tell them the challenges and you show them the road and you promise to do with them together, and if they know that you're doing the best that you can, and but you expect the best out of them, then they got a chance to obviously, play for you. In recruiting, to get the player, you've got to find out who the decision makers are. And so sometimes it's the young man himself. Sometimes if you don't get the mom, you ain't getting the kid, period. You could talk to dad, you could talk to the AAU coach, you could talk to the teacher. If mom's not on board, ain't nobody on board.
That's right, Coach. That's right.
Sometimes she's quiet about it, but don't underestimate her. That's her baby. Culture is very, very important. Your history of success is very, very important. Your locker room is important. Judge me by the company that I keep. Judge me by the coaches that I surround myself with. Are they good fathers? Did they play? What was their story? Is iron going to sharpen iron? Is my players being around them going to make them better? In recruiting, I think it's a little bit like business also, in the sense that I'm not recruiting, and I'm not going to be the head coach that's going to call them more than other head coaches. I'm not going to try to outwork a recruit to get their business or get them to come. Because when they come to play for me, I'm not trying to be their best friend. I'm trying to be their head coach. I'm trying to be their teacher. I'm trying to be their mentor. And sometimes I've got to be, hard on them. And so oftentimes the people that recruit the hardest are the ones that do the worst job retaining, because they simply recruit the business, but they can't keep the business because they overpromise and they underdeliver.
Yes. I love that, Coach, how you say, don't overpromise, overdeliver. Like, we might steal that one from you. I'm just saying. But, a lot of our listeners and viewers we're in the business of recruiting and retaining truck drivers, right? So we recently did a survey with drivers and asked them, like, how often are you recruited by other carriers? And over 55% of them said at least once a week I'm recruited. So they're constantly being recruited. I know in college basketball, just like other college athletics today, now you have the transfer portal, you have NIL deals, all the things. So retaining your current players is critical for you as well. So as a team, as you think about your team and your culture, what do you see as the keys to retaining your players today? to keeping them?
Well, Priscilla, one of the things about, first of all, we live in a great country. There's freedom of movement, freedom of opportunity, as there should be. The players sign, a form of a contract in the way of scholarship papers. There's some level of, 1 year at a time. Our other colleges can't contact our students. Otherwise, it's considered tampering. However, if they put their name in the transfer portal, they make themselves eligible for a 30 or 60-day period where other people can reach out and contact them. And then, of course, when they're out there in those moments, there's competition, and that competition is driven by name, image, and likeness, and compensation. That competition is driven by a promise of a better role or a better job or a better opportunity or some better coaching or some better fan base or, an opportunity to kind of get re-recruited a little bit. And obviously, great players are in high demand. Great truck drivers and guys that you can trust and know they're going to take care of their business and take pride in their work are in high demand. And so the bottom line is, you got to take care of your people, and you got to reward your people, and you got to make them part of the solution instead of, part of the problem. We have a society that we're teaching people to flee, don't fight. I tell people this all the time. You want to have success? So many people enter a job with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And as soon as they get a job, they're beginning to look for the next job or what's next. And I'm saying, you want the next job? You want a better job? Do an unbelievable job with the job you have. Like, be the best that you are at what you are, or work hard to become the best that you could possibly be at that. And guess what? Doors will open and you will have opportunity. But if you come in and rent, don't buy, you ain't staying very long. You're not. And you're not going to go, and you're not going to grow, and you're not going to get rewarded, and you're going to bounce. And then so at some point you're going to run out of opportunities. And at some point somebody's going to look at that resume and they're going to go, wait a second, how in the world could I trust you? How could I invest in you? You've been in 3 schools in 4 years. And so there certainly needs to be competition. There needs to be reward. My players, all my players, not just my starters, but the guys, that are coming off the bench and the guys that aren't playing as much as they want to play. We call it the bench mob. The guys that are sitting on the bench, that bench mob's important. We're only as good as our weakest link. And I've got to, again, when it comes to being honesty, I got to be able to explain to them, look, you older guys are going to have an opportunity most likely to play a little sooner than you younger guys. So what kind of a program do you have to retain? What kind of incentive is there to stay? What kind of reward am I going to have for my seniority and my loyalty? If there is none, see ya, I'm out. Look, people should do what's in their best interest. You should do what's in the best interest of yourself and your family. But it's not always chasing another quarter or another buck. There's got to be some sort of a blend. And it's a company's responsibility. It's a coach's and a university's responsibility to make these kids feel loved. I mean, you're a Razorback. And what does that mean? What responsibility does that carry? You got to represent the name on the front of your jersey as well as the name right here. You better, I remember hearing Phil Fulmer talk to the team one time before a big football game. And the guys were in the locker room and they were all kind of nervous. You could sort of tell it was really tight. It was really, really anxious in there. And Philip walked in, he said, you know what? Do your job. He looked at almost 100 guys right in the eye, which is impossible to do in about 30 seconds. He said, just do your job. You don't have to have an S on your helmet. In other words, you don't have to be timeout. You don't have to have an S on your chest, which means you don't have to be Superman, but you better represent that T on your helmet. And so for me, when I was working at the AC Acne Company, you better represent that jersey that you're wearing when you walk into that convenience store or when you're parking your truck in that parking lot, and how you're treating other people that are there. You represent your family name, but you represent the HC Hackney Company. You represent this Auburn. And if there's pride in your work and pride in what you're doing, and there's a little bit of love, we all have a chance to be successful.
That's good stuff. I don't know about Priscilla, but I'm ready to take a hill already. So, Coach, we've already talked about Twitter. We've talked about social media. We use that a lot in the trucking industry for recruiting. I know you use it as well. But what are some of the ways that you use that today, and how important do you think that is for recruiting in kind of today's culture?
Well, I know one thing. When a young man is on either Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, we will immediately, even in the process of recruiting them, teach them how to grow their profile, and teach them how to post some ideas of what to post. One of the things we always say is if you don't, as long as you're okay with your grandmother saying it, go ahead and put it out there. But if you're not okay with her saying it, don't do it, and pay attention, to that. But if all of a sudden a young man is, let's say it's Arkansas and Auburn for a top power forward, and if prior to his Auburn visit or during our Auburn visit or after the Auburn visit, he's got 10,000 more followers. And if he goes to Arkansas and he has 5,000 new followers, that's going to be a factor for him, that the Auburn fan base and the Auburn family has turned out and is following him, which then makes him more valuable for his own name, image, and likeness, which he can be, compensated for. On the recruiting side of things, we have somebody now, like, in other words, back in the day, ESPN or ABC or any of the networks were the only ones that could produce really quality sports productions and highlights. We have a full-time person that videotapes and records. Videotapes probably no world. I'm sure it's different than that today. But all of our practices, our training sessions, my talks in the locker room, our players in class, their fan experiences, our community service, our foreign trips, the kids' hobbies, and they put that stuff out on social media. And also, we use it in recruiting, so I'm able to send pictures, graphics, videos to players to recruit them rather than just a text message or a phone call. My staff is producing quality content saying, look, would you like to put this uniform on? Here's the craziness of coming in Neville Arena, or here's the way we play. And so, yeah, the importance of all that, both in video and film, as well as in graphics, and as well, we have somebody that spends time with graphic and design to be able to make our stuff look better.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's really important. And honestly, we can use a lot of that advice in our world in translating that for drivers. Do you have any stories of like how you've had a little bit of fun with that? Like, I know you're dealing with 18 to 22 year olds, like on social media or anything like that. Do you have any fun stories that when you're on the recruiting road or when you're trying to retain your drivers, how you've used that anyway?
Well, I mean, look, we use humor and relationships. Time is a love language, and my spending time with my players, so on and so forth. And even though I'm 63, I can still remember being back in college. And so every now and then I know a little bit about what goes on. And it blows the guys away, when I talk about things that they're doing that they ought not to be doing, or they're thinking twice about doing. And it's like, man, how does he know all this shit? Like, oh my God, it's like, does he have a camera? And we put sleep watches on them. And so I know when they're awake, and we do it just to monitor their rest, because rest and recovery is important. But if they're up for a couple hours between 1 and, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I know they're not sleeping, right? And they're in college. So, they just love me to, just give them a hard time. I would say this, and I don't know if this applies, but my players don't care how much I know until they know how much I care. And so that line right there was from the great Pat Dye. Auburn's legendary football coach and athletic director, and he's probably your Frank Broyles, if you will, for you Arkansas fans, right?
Nice.
Or your Woody Hayes for my dear friend Mark Hazelwood. And by the way, I'm brought to you by Mark Hazelwood, my dear friend, who is my lifelong brother, and what an amazing man who loves your industry as much as anybody I've ever met. But taking the guys to the lake, getting out on the jet skis, being out there in community service, going to church with them, just doing, having breakfast, just spending time with them is probably the greatest way that I can recruit and retain.
That's great. Well, Coach, just kind of one more question, and then I actually want to ask you one basketball question before we let you go. But you've kind of touched on several things, and everything you've said has just been fantastic. But just kind of to sum things up, what advice, based on the things that you've learned and experienced throughout your years in coaching, what advice would you have for the folks that are listening right now that are embedded in the driver recruiting and retention world? What advice would you have for them, just kind of generally overall?
I would think that, and this is not necessarily just a question that you're jumping out of me. Here's the first thing that comes to my mind. What they do is important. What they do is really, really important. Our country would not be able to economically survive without the trucking industry and the ability to get the goods and services where they need to be. Just look what happened to our supermarkets and our stores and things along those lines during the COVID periods and things like that. And I think it's important that I know it's important. And this is Priscilla and as a Coral, I'm looking at you there. Don't take this the wrong way, but I'm still kind of old school. A man needs to feel like he can provide for his family. That's a man's responsibility. It's in the Bible. And these men and women that are in the industry, they need to understand that they're providing for their families, to provide their families with a better life than they had themselves. And without the long hours and the hard work and the dedication, their kids and their families, would be experiencing different level of hardship. So, that's first and foremost. But then the second thing is taking some pride and responsibility in doing the job and doing it well, and understanding what a real positive impact that has. That a young man a second grader ought to go into a classroom and hold his mom or dad's hand that are in the trucking industry and be able to be really proud about what their mother or their father does at work. And I'm not just saying it. I really believe it.
That's great. That's great. So one quick question before we let you go on basketball. So obviously the SEC has really added. You got tons of great coaches now. The SEC in basketball has really risen to probably one of the top conferences when it comes to basketball. Lots of great coaches in the SEC. Yourself, Coach Muss, Nate Oates, Coach Cal. There's tons of them. Is there a coach either in the present or in the past that you've not coached against that you would love to match wits against?
Well, that's a good question. I honestly think I've coached against, I think, almost all of them. Rick Pitino was the best I ever went up against. Billy Donovan was one of those guys that I admired as much as any for the way he did business both on and off the court. I honestly can't think of a coach that that during my era that I haven't had an opportunity to compete against, and I'm grateful to be able to be at a place like Auburn that gives us the support that we need. Our fans are traveling with us on the road. By the way, when our fans are at home, obviously they're fans. When they're on the road, they're witnesses to a crime that's going to take place between the other team and those three officials. But we're starting to travel as well, and that's a lot of fun. But no, you just feel very grateful to be able to be in something and be able to compete against the best and have an opportunity to be successful.
Well, Coach, I really, really appreciate your time today. I know you got a lot going on, and for you to carve out 30 minutes of your day for us really means a lot. And I'll speak for Priscilla here. Obviously, we wish you best of luck. Best of luck to the Auburn Tigers in this season, maybe except the 2 times that you maybe play Arkansas. But we wish you best of luck, best success, and really thank you for your time and your insight today.
We're right off of Highway 85 and exit 51. Stop in anytime. And take care, guys. War Eagle.
Right. Thanks so much, Coach.
Right,
Blue Pig, Coach. War Eagle. Bye-bye.
There you go.
Well, Scott, I mean, could we have asked for a better guest for this episode? First of all, he had so much insight regarding trucking. I just thought it was great. But, I mean, when he busted out on some Alabama fans, I could barely hold my professionalism intact. Okay.
Well, so I got to admit, when I asked the follow up about Forrest Gump and liking Forrest Gump, I did not expect him to go there.
Yeah, but he did.
I'm not going to lie, that was, and I mean, he kind of gigged us too. I mean, let's be honest. He gigged us too, but
he did. And listen, I don't blame him. That's why I got a Woo Pig in at the end. Like, yeah, War Eagle all day, but we gonna go Woo Pig Suey too. You know what I'm saying? But I loved him. That was fantastic.
I obviously appreciate him coming on, but he's got a lot going on, and for him to do that is, I'd like to say it says a lot about, the popularity of our podcast, but sometimes having friends in high places, matter. So yeah, I think there was a lot to take there. And I hope the folks that are tuning in kind of listen to some of the things he said, because I think there's so much of that can be translated from his industry of expertise into what the folks that we talk to on a daily basis, just from a recruiting and retention standpoint. I mean, you heard him say a lot of things that, communication and culture and relationships. I mean, those are all things that we talk about in the trucking industry. And for him to kind of touch on all of those that he experiences within his industry in recruiting and basketball, it was just very fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was great. And he really honed in on honesty. And, we know from the driver surveys that we do that a lot of times drivers don't trust recruiters. And I think that's critical. And he hit on that early and often. So yeah, it was amazing. I'm so excited we did that. That was fun.
Yeah. That one was a lot of fun. I can't wait to get folks' feedback on that one. Well, let's go into the resource side of this. Obviously, I think we're all on a little bit of a high from our interview with Coach, but let's kind of focus back down onto the resource. And for those of you that listened to our first episode, obviously we want to take this part to kind of tell you some data points, some things that have kind of popped out to us recently that we want to share, maybe that have caught our eye and maybe help you recruit smarter and retain better. And Priscilla, I'll kind of let you kick that off.
Yeah, so I'm kind of going a little bit in the past and digging up a piece of data because I think it's really important right now. This climate that we're in, I know some of the data that we're seeing come back from our quarterly data download that we just published, that just came out. It actually showed that, the drivers have some concerns, which tells me that we're probably, if you're a fleet and you're not experiencing a little bit higher turnover, you might just brace yourself because that might be something that we see kind of people a little more focused on retention and turnover. But one of the things, remember, that drivers told us just last year, and honestly, every time we ask this question on a driver survey, it's kind of the leader of the pack. But 74% of drivers said the first place they go when they're looking for a job are to online driver reviews. And so I think that in the climate that we're in, it's just really important for fleets and carriers to keep in mind, if you're not currently monitoring your online driver reviews, responding to those, because listen, if someone leaves a negative review, and they're all not negative, there's a lot of them that are positive, but if someone leaves a negative review and you're not responding to it, it's basically like you're ignoring them. And so, but if someone leaves a negative, we've actually seen it turn around. Like you respond and then the driver even responds back and is like, oh, wow, thank you. I'm so glad that that you let me know that's how you handle that policy. I wasn't aware of that, or whatever that might be. But I just think it's a really good time to remind ourselves, let's be monitoring. And when I talk about online driver reviews, I mean on platforms like Google and Indeed and Facebook and Glassdoor. So think of it that way. If you're not monitoring those, it's critical because that's where they're going first. So if you're having a turnover issue, or if you're worried about retaining your current drivers, or even, recruiting drivers, you're going to need to go and really look and monitor those reviews. So I just think that's something important to keep in mind right now.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm also going to our Q2 data report, which if you haven't downloaded it yet, you need to go download our Q2 data report. We have been putting these data reports out quarterly for, I think, 2.5 years roughly. And, for the most part, equipment issues are kind of always the top issue, top frustration for drivers. In Q4 of last year, compensation actually ticked up a little bit above equipment for the first time. And really since then, Q1 and Q2, they've kind of been neck and neck, right? Right about the same with equipment and compensation issues. So we can start to see, kind of going back to what Bob Costello talked about on our previous episode, that obviously the freight and the freight recession is ultimately having an effect, and it's really having an effect on drivers' pay. And we can really see that because when we dug into the drivers in Q2 that talked about compensation, 60% of those drivers that were talking about compensation were complaining about miles. They weren't complaining about pay rate; they were complaining about miles. And really that boils down to, if you dig that down a little bit deeper, when they're talking about miles, the two biggest things were loads not available and inconsistent miles. That's really what it broke down to. So I think that really speaks to the freight recession that Bob talked about on the last episode. But I think more importantly is each quarter we also look at what are the top 10 issues behind drivers who voluntarily left their job in each quarter. And ever since we started doing that, the top issue has always been equipment issues, just really kind of mechanical breakdown issues. That's always been the top issue. It's always been a top frustration for drivers. And really that encapsulates a lot of things. And what we see from equipment issues a lot of times is the effect that it has on other things like home time, like miles and the ability to make pay. But for the first time ever in Q2 of this year, the top issue for drivers that voluntarily left their job in Q2 was loads not available from a mile standpoint. So obviously that's talking compensation, but it's really talking, and it really hits home with what happened in Q2 with the freight recession. I think we saw, particularly I think April and May in particular were really tough from a freight standpoint. We haven't really seen the final numbers for June just yet, but I think that really speaks to what is going on right now. And I think the thing and the advice that I would give to folks listening is if you have the ability to identify the drivers who are struggling with miles, the best way to handle that from a retention standpoint is to get in front of it. And going back to what Coach Pearl said is honesty. Be open and honest with those drivers. Listen, they understand that there's a freight shortage, that there's a freight recession. But communicating with your current drivers, talking to them, walking them through it, helping them navigate this situation, because it's just as frustrating for them as it is to the folks trying to move the freight. That is the big issue of the day right now, is the freight recession, inconsistent miles, and loads not available. So I think that's really key right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right. I mean, Coach Pearl really hit on a lot of that. And it is interesting that it's really like a glaring leading cause. I mean, for you to say that the entire time since you guys have been following that data, for that to kind of rise to the top that's pretty, significant, I guess I would say. So
no, I think it is. And I think, listen, at this point, I think communication in general, from recruiting and for retention, communication is going to be key, because it's going to be about getting in front of as many issues as possible to retain those current drivers.
Yep, I agree. Well, what a fun episode this has been. I mean, gosh, this was awesome. All right. Well, thanks for listening to The Resource. If you had fun, please give us a high five by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button so you can never miss an episode of our shenanigans. Listen, I will say we were well behaved today with Coach Pearl. I felt like, that could have got out of hand from my standpoint, but it did not.
Well, it could have. It could have. Yeah, you were very kind. We didn't. I think there were several people that wanted us to say Roll Tide. So I think we behaved ourselves to the standpoint that we didn't even say Roll Tide, but we did get a woo pig in. So that's good.
Yes.
All right, folks. Well, if you have any questions or feedback to share, hit us up on social media or via email. We will be back on our next episode. It'll be interesting to see who our next guest is. I'm not sure I'd want to follow Coach Pearl, but somebody will be following Coach Pearl here next month. But we'll be back on our next episode with some more fun, some data, some information to help you with your recruiting and retention game. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, guys.